Good evening, everyone. Nice to see you all. So we were looking at the Alei Shur. We still had about half a page left of the previous source sheet, but I also put online a new source sheet. When we turn over to the new source sheet, if people tell me they haven't got it, then I'll post it up as a screen share so that people can see it. But for now, we've just got to finish off the old source sheet. Rav Wolbe had told us in the topic he was looking at was Mahu Adam, and we were looking at the various words of Chazal on the subject. The last two pieces that Rav Wolbe mentioned, the first of them was that a person's statement of Rabbi Lezer, who says in the Gemara in Yevamos Samach Gimel, that a person, to be a person, needs Adama. We need to be earthed. We need to be grounded. Otherwise, this isn't an Adam. A person has to be connected to the Adama, not floating up in the air. And we discussed that in 2 weeks back. In last week's share, we saw an almost contradictory idea from the Shlah, in which the Shlah, Shnei Luchos Habris, Rabbi Shaya Horovitz, an early Achron and Makubal, says two meanings to the word Adam. One is a Adam as in Adama, a person is earthy and is capable of being physical. But the second meaning of the word Adam is Adame, I will be similar. Adame le'elyon, I will be similar to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, who is above us all. And this derives from the nature of a person that we are Adame, we are copiers, we are mimics. But we face a choice what we mimic, what we copy. We're social creatures. We learn from a very young age, from babyhood and up, to copy. What do we copy though? So we have a choice. Are we Adameh, that we choose to copy HaKadosh Baruch Hu, or do we choose to be drawn and dragged after our material surroundings and end up as Adama, as earth? This is the choice that a person faces. In the meaning of the word Adameh, as in I will copy, the aleph, the I, comes first. Adameh, I will copy. Meaning to say I will make a choice to elevate myself to be similar to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to model myself on Hashem. On the meaning of Adama, then Adama, Aleph Daled Mem, is part of the root. There's no I will, it's just Adama, I'm earth. There is no I there. There's not me choosing to rise above my instincts, but I just flow along with the instincts, and therefore Adama, I just become a material being. This was the beautiful and important idea that Rav Wolbe shared with us from the Shlah HaKadosh, from the Holy Shlah, the Shnei Luchos Habris. Now, at the end of the piece, and we were near the end of the chapter, Rav Wolbe did a tour of the different reasons why a person should be good. And in a remarkable paragraph, he quoted the whole range of thinkers and philosophers that exist across the generations that look at this issue of what it means to be a good person, where ethics come from. He quoted the view of some who say this is all about convenience. If we're good, then we can cope together. We can have a society that's built. The only way to run a society is a code of conduct. It's a sort of a social contract. He quoted the school of thought of the Greek Epicurus. He said it's about pleasure, maximizing pleasure by being good. Shlomo HaMelech, he quoted. He said that we need good midas in order to be chokhmah, in order to achieve true wisdom. He quoted the idea of Socrates, that it's about conscience. And he says none of these are profound enough. The root of our spirituality is Adameh, that we are capable of being godly, we are capable of being similar to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Loleches B'drachav, that we can walk in the ways of Hashem. And finally, Rav Wolbe, that we saw last week, finished off with the staggering idea that we can only be similar to HaKadosh Baruch Hu in the middle of chesed, of overflowing givingness. However, in the middle of emes and mishpat, we can't achieve absolute truth. We can only ever have a limited perspective. Emes is something connected with the infinity, the infinite nature of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and therefore only with respect to Emes, truth, chesed rather, kindness, are we capable of achieving some similarity, some overlap with Hashem. However, in the case of Emes, this is above our level. Human beings can't achieve absolute Emes, and therefore we need to tzedek tirdov. We need to pursue justice. We need to try and be as honest as we can, but we can't think that we have absolute truth. We're not capable of achieving absolute truth. This is something which is only Hashem's mitzvah, and therefore there's no mitzvah of halachta b'drachav in walking in the ways of Hashem when it comes to this quality. This is what Rav Wolbe said in the concluding paragraph. I just want to finish off with the very last words of this section, and I'm just going to do a screen share of that in case you don't have this handout. Yes, so I've given you now as a screen share the last paragraph, so we can just finish off this section. And he says, Boi Ura'ei, this is the bottom of the paragraph, Boi Ura'ei Yasoid Godel B'chol Inyan Hiskarvus Odom and HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Let's see a great depth, a great principle in drawing near to Hashem. And now he quotes a medrash, Isa b'Sifri. A medrash, the Sifri, by the way, is a unique sort of medrash. It's a halachic medrash. It's a medrash which deals and addresses with halachic matters. And the Sifri picks up on the language of Kriyas Shema, that we say in Shema every day. V'ahavtes Hashem Elokecha b'chol levavcha v'chol nafshecha v'chol meidecha. You should love Hashem completely. Asks the Sifri, how can we achieve Ahavas Hashem? And it answers it by looking at the continuation of the pasuk. Boi Ura'ei Yasoid Godel, the bottom of the paragraph which I'm sharing on the screen. Let's learn a great principle. Hisgavus ha'odam al HaKadosh Baruch Hu. How a human being can draw near to Hashem. Isa b'Sifri ala pasuk. The Sifri, the Medrash, the Sifri from Chazal says in the pasuk, V'hoyu advarim ha'ela asher nichim tzavachayim al levavecha. These words, meaning the words of Torah, should be al levavecha, should be on our hearts. The Fisher who Omer, because the pasuk says, "V'ahavtes Hashem Elokecha," you should love Hashem. Ein yoder keitzad lov. We don't know how can we achieve love. Talmud Loma, therefore the pasuk says, "V'hoyu hadvarim ha'ela al levavecha." The top line, "Shemetoch kach atamati maki HaKadosh Baruch Hu medabik b'drachav." So the Sifri presents over here a chain of how we develop. And the Sifri says there's a progression. V'ahavtes Hashem Elokecha, we have a mitzvah of loving Hashem. How can we love Hashem? Through v'hoyu hadvarim ha'ela. We learn Torah. And through that, makir b'HaKadosh Baruch Hu, we get to know HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So that's stage 2. How can we get to know HaKadosh Baruch Hu? We can't know HaKadosh Baruch Hu, who is infinite, who is above time and space. However, we can learn his Torah. Through that, learn the rotzen of Hashem, that which Hashem wants from us. If you know the rotzen of a person, what they want, then you know the person. Think of this, in all people, if you really understand yourself, what you truly desire, what you truly want, or someone you know and love and care for, you know what they want, what their ambitions are, what their goals are, what they want to be, or more profoundly, how they want to be themselves, and what they want to achieve in the world, and how they want the world to be, then you understand the closest you can know of a person. And therefore, if we know the rotzen Hashem, how the world is and how the world should be, where he wants it to be, then that's the closest we can come to being makir, to knowing HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Not yodeya as an abstract philosophical principle, but makir, to recognize, like one knows a fellow person. That's v'hoyu advarim ha'ela. But where should these words be? Al levavecha, on our hearts, which the Sifri translates as medabek b'drachav. We should cleave, we should stick, we should glue ourselves, we should go in his ways. And Rav Wolbe picks up on this language, and he says that as soon as we have a hakara, a recognition of Hashem, that should lead to a halachta b'drachav, to a walking in his ways. Meaning to say that unless we walk in the way of someone, we don't really recognize them, we don't really know someone. If someone says, I know HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but they don't walk in his ways, then that means they maybe have an abstract intellectual awareness, but they haven't internalized it. This isn't a hakara. This isn't a genuine relationship. Because if there was a genuine sense of connection, him and me, which is what we are aiming for in our Yiddishkeit, aiming for in our connection to Hashem, then it would inevitably mean that we internalize it, that we act upon this. Because it's only by internalizing it that we are living it. And only when we are living it that this is a true knowledge. And therefore carries on Rav Wolbe in his next paragraph. In the highlighted section, hurry the top line, hurry b'his davkus b'HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the top line of what you can see on the screens, by cleaving to Hashem, tzricha lot seis miyad halicha b'drachav. Immediately, tzricha lot seis miyad, immediately that's to come out a halicha b'drachav. Hakara, recognition, she'emin ima halicha b'drachav, that doesn't involve walking in his ways. Ein hakara mitis is not a true recognition. And then he quotes a Gemara, which we've looked up before. The Gemara picking up on the language used by a time of very intense connection with Hashem, when we were crossing through the Yam Suf and we sang the Shur, and we said, Zer Keli V'anveyu, Zer Keli, this is my God. The word Zer in Hebrew is only when there's an intense connection, when something is in front of one, almost tangible, and we were able to relate to Hashem as Zer, as this is, V'anveyu. And the Gemara explains the meaning of the word Zer Keli V'anveyu, the third line in the source. Abashal Omer V'anveyu Havedomelai. I have to be similar to him. Just like he is loving and merciful, so too we should be loving and personal. Rashi comments on that. The fifth line, Havedomelo, be similar to him. Veloshan anvehu ani vehu. The language of Avehu is I and he. The anvehu, there's I and he. There's a connection. There's a relationship between us. I will make myself like him. It says me and him. We have a direct connection to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, with Hashem. And how do we achieve this direct connection? To go in his ways, to walk in his ways. So says Rav Wolbe in this section. Meaning to say, as he goes on to explain, that this isn't just a pun that the Gemara is saying, v'anvehu, v'anivahu, but it's the essence of their situation in the passage through Kriyas Yam Suf, and the sense of depth of connection that they had with him with Hashem at that point. That they saw HaKadosh Baruch Hu without barrier, literally in the definition of anivahu, him and me, and therefore out of them immediately flows I'll make myself like him. Someone who claims that they recognize Hashem without improving themselves, then this isn't a recognition of Hashem. Hashem is the inherent in knowing and having a relationship with Hashem is not just Hashem as a mitzvah, a command in the sense of I have to do this. These are the instructions I've been given. But Hashem in the terms of the goal set of humanity. Hashem in terms of how we ought to be, what it means to be a person who has Kedusha in their lives. We are created with this ability, using the language of the Shlo, of Adameh, a part of us that longs not just to connect and imitate anyone, but to connect with the root of our spirituality, which is HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And therefore to know and recognize HaKadosh Baruch Hu is immediately to be drawn to him. And therefore, Zerkedi, as soon as we have a relationship with Anvehu, as soon as there's me and him, as soon as there's that sense of connection, I will be drawn after him and follow in his ways. And this, therefore, says Rav Wolbe, is the explanation of the Sifri. You should love Hashem. What is love? Love is a sense of being drawn and connected. And how do I how can I create this connection with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, who is ultimately unknowable? What can we know about HaKadosh Baruch Hu? He's infinite. We don't have the language to speak about him. The answer is, we should learn the words of the Torah, and through that we are makir, we recognize what he wants. But as soon as we are makir, as soon as we get to know him through Torah, then immediately in the language of the Sifri, we will cleave in his ways, we will follow and we will begin acting in accordance with that, and then we will become Adameh, then we will become similar to him, we will copy him, we will model ourselves on him, and that's what it means to be a human being in this meaning of the words. And therefore, we finish off the final paragraph in this section of Rav Wolbe. Kol Zeh, the final paragraph. Kol Zeh is b'chinas Adama. All of this is a person who chooses to be Adameh. I will be similar. Hamafrid atzmo midavkus v'zdamas nikra shem Adama. But someone who separates themselves from copying and being like HaKadosh Baruch Hu is Adama, is mere earth. Hu Ashabiyah Rabbeinu Yonah. And now he brings a very profound idea from Rabbeinu Yonah. Rabbeinu Yonah, the Spanish Rishon, in the 1300s. V'da ki nefesh harosha, the soul of a wicked person, his whole longing, his whole desires are for bodily pleasures and needs, and their longings and desires are separate from their service of Hashem, and separate from their roots. When they die, when they cease to exist in physical bodies, they will go down to the ground, which is the place of their longing. Meaning to say, a person who is only drawn after physicality and that's their whole sense of self. When they die, when they no longer have a physical body, cease to be. There's nothing left of them to continue to exist. What is that's wrong? What is a flaw with this person? That their natural human drives and energies aren't used for avodah of Hashem. They're not channeling them. Adameh, there's an I here who's making a proactive decision. What sort of person am I going to be? What am I going to use them for? But rather, just Adama. I'm just being passive. I'm being drawn after my instinctive, materialistic makeup. And therefore carries on Revolba. Tavas haroshan ifredes mi avodas Hashem, or be'emes mekoma dafka b'avodah. The true place for longing and drives is not a negative. They're not meant to be cut off, but they're meant to be used for the worship of Hashem. Even our physical drives and desires can be used for something positive. When we use them for mitzvahs, and this is a fiery force within us that can be used for something positive. If we separate ourselves from our worship of Hashem, then our soul is separated from its roots. And therefore, Revolba concludes this section by saying that roots of our essence, of our soul, is b'meromim, is in elevated places. We can choose to detach ourselves from the roots and make ourselves into Adama, but then we won't be ourselves. But equally, and tying this back to the first part, we have to have Adama. This was a statement of Rabbi Lezer. Anyone who doesn't have Adama, who doesn't have land, isn't a human being either. So this is the paradox of the path we walk. We have to, on the one hand, have Adama in our lives. We need to be grounded. We need to be beings that remember that we are earthly, we are physical. If we try and detach ourselves from that, if we have a mistaken sense of spirituality, that somehow we are angels and angelic, then this isn't what a person is meant to be. We'll be in denial of what we are and therefore not able to elevate that. On the other hand, we have to be Adameh. There has to be an I here, an I who chooses to do what? To mold my earthly instincts and direct them in the service of Hashem. And therefore, just to look at the punchline of how Revolba concludes this very section, the very final words that he says in this last section, this choice is in our hands. To be an Adameh, someone who is similar, who copies, or to, God forbid, to be someone who is mere earth. On the other hand, we're not meant to jump to the heavens. We have to be rooted on the ground. We have to elevate the body and its physical forces using our das, using our minds. And in that is found all the aspects of human existence which we've discussed from Chazal in this section. So this draws us to a close in this part, this chapter of Revolba. The next chapter, which we're going to start tonight, is going to look with great attention. It's a very, very important and interesting chapter. In a fascinating way, it's going to look at how our minds work and how this das, which Revolba mentions, which is meant to be used for the service of Hashem, how that works. And how our intellect deals with things. A very, very important next chapter. But this concludes the second chapter of Revolba on this issue. Before I go further, are there any questions on what we've seen so far? You can either ask them or put them in the chat. Otherwise, we will move on. Okay, we'll move on to the next chapter. And can I just ask of you, do any of you not have the new handout? This is the new handout that was just put online today. And I posted it also, I asked for it to be posted via the WhatsApp group. This is the third chapter of Revolba. If someone doesn't have it, I can screen share, but if not, then I'm happier to use it without screen sharing. Does anyone not have the third chapter? If you can just let me know via chat or just put a signal on your page if you don't have the handout. Okay, so I'm not going to share the screen for the next chapter, and I'm going to assume you all have the handout. So the next chapter of Revolba, as I say, is an exceptionally important chapter, and he calls the chapter Deah, Bina, V'Haskel. Now, we've spoken a little bit about these terms before. Revolba here is going to deal with it in a completely different direction. These terms are important, of course, because they refer to three types of intellect Dea, das, knowledge, bina, understanding, haskel, seichel. Not entirely clear even how to translate these words. And we use these words a lot, and we're not always clear exactly how to distinguish between them. Depending on your nusach, this may be the very words used in the brach of Atachonin, the first of the bakoshas, request brachas, that we say in the Amidah and the Shemoneh Esrei, Atachonin, in which we refer to qualities of intellect, and we use, according to many Nusros, these terms for these three aspects of intellect. And we don't always understand what these terms mean. You know, different languages specialize in different terms, how they distinguish between similar concepts. They say, I don't know if this is true, that in the language that is spoken by the Eskimo, there's many words for snow, because there's many different sorts of snow. And if you're living in this culture which has to deal with snow, you need to distinguish between thick snow and thin snow, or soggy and wet snow and dry snow, because that will make a difference to how you get around. I don't know if this is an urban legend or it's true, but supposedly in Inuit, they have many words for snow. In Lashon HaKodesh, we have many words for das and seichel, because this is something that occupies us and that we consider to be of importance. So Rav Wolbe here addresses in his essay these qualities of das, and he moves on to discuss these as a link, as a continuation of the last chapter. Because in the last chapter we spoke about the danger of passivity, of just being like earth, which is acted upon, rather than the I, the adame, the I will choose to mold and mimic and channel myself and model myself, perhaps best translated, on HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And the tool that we have to do that is our intellect, our thought process, and therefore we need to understand a little bit better how that works. And therefore this chapter begins, Perek Shlishi, the third chapter, Deyal Bina Haskel, Kavash Shamanu, we have already heard, Sha'adam Murkav Miseichel or Midot. A person is made up. Murkav is a combination of seichel, of mind, and midas, and qualities of personality. We've discussed in previous sections the qualities of personality. He now wants to discuss the qualities of mind. We need to break this down into more detail. In this chapter we're going to try, with great brevity, to talk about the main forces, abilities, talents, aspects, energies, which are the fundamental and most general ones which are connected to the world of seichel, the world of thought. So goes the introduction. Now Rav Wolbe immediately gets down to the subject point in a fantastic way. And this chapter to me was an eye-opener. In seichel there are two different sort of actions that we can do. Number one, hakara, recognition, understanding. Number two, ha'aracha, evaluation, how we value things. Haseichel, the mind, makir, it recognizes. Meaning to say, im ein ta'ut b'hakara, if there's no mistake in our recognition, hariyam it is, then we recognize something as it is. Asher kol bal seichel yochel haskim ima, that every intelligent person will agree. Im efshar haskim ima hakara, if we don't agree with this, yesh lezeh achas mishtei sibos, there could be one of two reasons. Or that either that our mind doesn't work as it should, or that our seichel, our thought process, isn't straight. Or that our mind is being bribed by something. There's something that's swaying our judgment and therefore not allowing us to think clearly. Zosomeris, this means to say, on Udarshim, we demand Shaseichel Yashar v'Tahor. We want the Seichel both to be straight and to be pure. Seichel Kazen, if we have both these qualities, Yochel Agiyal Akara Mitzvahs can arrive at truthful recognition, objectivit, which will be objective. So far, so simple. One aspect of the Seichel is the ability of the Seichel to recognize. We see the reality. We walk around and we see an object and we work out, what is this object? Is it a tree? Is it a car? Is it a bike? Is it a road? Is it a person? Is it a building? To recognize that which is going on around us. And if we are equipped appropriately to recognize, then we can work out what something is. And we can know that this is an accurate reflection of what it is. Of course, this is a very simple level of Hakara. It gets more complicated than that. There's Hakara of intellectual ideas. Understanding and insight into how the world works, the laws of nature, the laws of science, or perhaps art and psychology, and whatever it may be, we need to recognize things which aren't as simple as just recognizing trees and cars and people. And that's the second aspect of Hakara recognition, the Seichel understanding and seeing and putting together and collating, and through that coming to a conclusion about what something is. Now, this second aspect of Hakara, fundamentally though, is really the same idea. It's collating data. The data may not be empirical, it may not be physical objects that we see and can touch and can smell and can hear, but nonetheless, there's a data, there's an understanding and an insight that we have, which we use to understand and form a conclusion about the reality of the world outside ourselves. Why do we sometimes differ? Why do we have disagreements about what went on? Why do we see the same objects and see different things? So one, fundamentally, of two reasons. Either it's a limitation in the Seichel, in our intellectual faculty, or it's a bias which is blinding us and swaying our judgment. Let's leave for now the second, which is the bias that's swaying our judgment, and let's unpick the first. What does this mean to say that two people can see the same thing, whether it's a physical object or a more abstract thing like an idea in science or thought or emunah and philosophy or whatever it may be, and come to a different conclusion when there isn't a bias there? Well, it could be because there's a limit to the seichel of a person. It could be that the seichel doesn't work well, it's not yashar, it's not straight. Or it could be that the seichel isn't up to this. There's ideas which are so complicated and abstract and difficult that a seichel isn't equipped to do it. Not everyone can understand the very profound ideas of the greatest scientists or the greatest philosophers. Their seichel isn't up to it. Seichel also takes work. It's not so simple just to recognize something. There's a process that our seichel, our minds take till it can come to a conclusion, even something which is perfectly within our grasp, within our ability to work out. If I give you a complicated sum, what's 357 divided by 36.2, there may be nothing in that sum that you're incapable of doing. It may be that you can sit down with a pen and paper and work it out. And if it's a simpler sum that everyone can do, what's 184 plus 476? At this moment in time, I've got no idea what the answer is. It wouldn't take me long, it's not that difficult. All of us in this meeting could do it, but it would take some amount of time. If you're a bit faster, it may be 3 seconds, 5 seconds, 10 seconds, if you're a bit slower, a minute, but we could all get there. But there's a process of time that takes us to get there. So this isn't a lack of yashrus, of straightness. It isn't a sheikhad, a bribe, a bias which is blinding us. It's simply that it takes time. Now there could be a bribe or a blindness in this that makes us too lazy to think things through. In which case this could be a second reason why we disagree. We said already, there's two reasons why human beings can come to different conclusions on the side of hakara, of recognition of the truth. It could be because the seichel isn't up to it. That means to say it's not straight enough, it can't reach, it's too abstract, or it just hasn't yet worked it through. The seichel is physical, is fleshy, is meaty. It takes time to do things and we haven't yet worked that out. Or it could be a bias. A bias could be because I've got an agenda, I want a certain answer. Or a bias could simply be I'm lazy, and if I never bother doing that working out. So our biases can affect our ability to see the truth, either because they literally warp and distort our judgment, or because it stops us investing the effort that we need to do. But even leaving aside the bias, sometimes different humans will come to different conclusions, because our minds work in different ways. We understand things differently. And one of us may be a deeper thinker or a clearer thinker, in the language of Volba, more tahar, more pure in our thinking. It doesn't mean this in a spiritual sense, it just means that intellectually our minds are less muddied and clouded, and therefore such a person will arrive at a greater understanding of the truth. But in principle, one aspect of seichel is hakara, is recognition, and in that it should be capable of arriving at truth to the extent of our ability. So this is the first idea that Volba says. By the way, even here, Volba has taught us something important, which is you will often hear those who don't understand the depth of Mussar teachings, Volba did, but those who don't understand the depth of Mussar teachings will say the only reason why people don't come to the same conclusions as I do, the only reasons perhaps why they're not ma'aminim or don't believe in Hashem or whatever it may be, is because of bias. Because there's an igiyas, they don't like the thought of accepting Hashem, and they don't want to do mitzvahs, and they don't want to be controlled, they want to be free, and this acts as a bias which stops them arriving at the truth. However, this is incorrect. It is true that people can have a bias, and the bias could be the thing that stops them arriving at the truth. But the truth is, they could show the same claim as us, and they could say we also have biases, and they're not necessarily wrong. Maybe we like the idea of being part of a community, being connected with our families, maybe we find it comforting to have HaKadosh Baruch in our lives. There could be biases there also. That's not inconceivable. But it's important to remember that whilst bias can be one of the limitations on our ability as humans to make correct decisions, there could be something else. Our seichel itself can sometimes struggle to master difficult facts. This could be because our seichel isn't pure enough. It's a clouded thinker. It could be it's not up to that level of abstract thinking, or it could simply be because it takes time to think things through. If it takes time to think through a simple sum that all of us could do, 437 plus 269, it takes time nonetheless to work it out. And at this moment in time, none of us know the answer, even though we could all know the answer, but it will take us 10 seconds. Then maybe there's other more complicated sums that we could all do that would take us not 10 seconds, but 10 years. And maybe therefore someone who isn't yet a Maimon or yet a Maimon is simply in the process of working something out and it takes time. Or maybe they will never work it out because they won't invest the time and effort and energy into it. But not because there's just a simplistic explanation of bias, of negias, of sheikhad, which is blinding them. However, sheikhad can exist. And therefore, Alei says when we're looking at this aspect of seichel, there's two reasons why someone may not arrive at the truth, or we may differ with the truth. One is, yes, bias, sheikhad, and the other is because of the workings of the human mind, which has its limits. And some minds are more yashar, some are less yashar, some are more tahor, some are less tahor, and some have been molded through hard work into better functioning seichel. So this is the first aspect of the seichel and how we operate. In a moment, we're going to go on to the second aspect, but again, I'll just pause for a moment in case anyone wants to unmute themselves and ask anything, or if someone wants to post a question via chat. Okay, so this is the second, this is the first idea that Alei says and how the seichel works. But now he comes on to something very, very important and interesting. The seichel marich. The second job that the mind does is it evaluates. Laha'arich. Erich is a value. Ma'arich is it ascribes value. It evaluates. It weighs up what is worth what the value of something is, and sometimes how that value contrasts and compares to other things. And he says as follows: Seichel marich nagia batzmenu. Let's reflect in ourselves. Much more time, much more energy, busyness that we spend on trying to recognize things. We spend on evaluating them. This is a phenomenal thought. If I said to you, what do you spend most of the time? What does a mind do most of the time? We just said thinking, understanding, recognizing what's going on in the world. But this isn't the case. Literally the whole day we're engaged in evaluating things. On a we meet a person. And our first reaction is, do I find the person favorable? Don't I? Do I like them? Don't I like them? What do I think about them? This is an evaluation that takes place. On a time we taste the food, or we see a view. Immediately we express a satisfaction, or a lack of satisfaction with this. Again, this is an evaluation. In the shop, we want to buy something. What's most suitable for us? When we find it on the shoklim, we weigh up. Is it worth the price? There's a double evaluation going on over here. Whether an evaluation, whether I like this or not, is it suitable for me? An evaluation, is it worth it? A cost-benefits analysis. I can use the money, but then there's a cost to using the money that I won't be able to use it for something else. So we are the whole time engaged in haracha, in evaluation, much more than we engage in hakara, in recognition of facts. And this is fascinating. We think that as we're walking around and wandering through life, most of what we're doing is trying to understand, assess facts, but it's not the case. Most of what we're doing is haracha. How much do I value this? What does it mean to me? What do I think about this? What do I feel about this? In fact, there are studies that show that within the first seconds of encountering a new person, you walk into a room and you see a new face, someone who you've never met before, and within a few seconds you form an evaluation, an opinion about the person. What's it based on? Barely any data at all. Just on instincts of looks. What those looks mean to me, based upon previous experiences and other nonsense like that, and immediately I evaluate. I don't engage in hakara, in trying to recognize and learn this person and get to know them and understand them, and really arrive at the emes, the truth, the amitat hadavar, the truth of the matter, to try and understand it. But I immediately engage in haracha, in estimation. I'm not bothering basically to get my hakara recognition aspect of my mind working. I'm not bothering thinking, what is the answer to 267 plus 493? I'm just immediately going into haracha evaluation mode. And once I've formed my judgment, then it's very difficult. Because even if afterwards I try and use my hakara, my recognition to work out the truth of the matter, now I already have a bias. And the bias is I've already formed a judgment. I don't like admitting that my first judgment was wrong. I think I have an instinct to know people quickly. And therefore it's hard for me to budge and change my judgment after that. There's been very interesting surveys that have been done in which people who interview people for positions, for jobs, or police who interview suspects or suspected of crime, they all think, judges who interview witnesses to make a decision, they all think that they can better evaluate the truth of the statement if they see the person in front of them. And it is true that seeing a person can make a difference. However, if they don't initially see the person and they just hear them, they are more likely to make a correct decision. So if, for example, you go through two interview processes, one in which a screen is put up so that the interviewer can't see the interviewee at the beginning of the interview, and they interview them and then only at the end they will see them, they are more likely, once they've made the decision who to employ, to be happy with that employee a year later. And the same in many, many fields, police trying to decide about criminals and judges and so on. And the reason is because the voice that is heard, one also has a haracha, also an evaluation. You may find the voice more or less pleasant. You may jump to a conclusion based upon the accent or something trivial like that. But nonetheless, it's less impactful than seeing. When we see, we immediately jump to haracha mode, to evaluation mode, before we go to hakara, to recognition, to assessment of the truth. And therefore, that can mislead us even if later we do or try to do the hakara. If we can set things up that we first do the hakara, then we're more likely to arrive at the truth, followed by the haracha. Of course, at the end of the interview, we need to see the person. Of course, it depends what job we're asking the person for. Maybe their appearance is very important at the job. But a lot of the time, it's completely irrelevant to the job. How good they will be at the job, their appearance is completely irrelevant. Nonetheless, we are affected by this by seeing it because we jump to haracha, and therefore it distorts and weakens our judgments rather than strengthening it. And this, therefore, is the point that Revolba is making over here, that another part of what we do with our minds, more than we realize, perhaps we spend most of our time doing, is we walk through life and we're engaged in haracha, in evaluation of effective and respective value and worth, rather than hakara, in trying to see what it is. Now, at this point, perhaps we've presented an overly bleak view as to what haracha is. Well, why should I ever walk around evaluating things? And this isn't the point of Revolba. Haracha is absolutely vital to what we are as human beings. And we'll see, not this week or next week, to what degree it's absolutely essential. We wouldn't be humans, we couldn't be humans unless we engaged in evaluation. It's what we spend our whole time doing. And there's a reason why that's the case. Because that's how we connect and assess what something means to us. Our children, our spouses, those we love, or not. So haracha is absolutely valuable and essential. However, we just need to know it's a double-edged sword. But before we know it's a double-edged sword, we need to be honest. We need to recognize hakara, what we are doing with our minds. And the answer is we're doing two things. Hakara, recognition, of assessing the reality of a situation, and haracha, weighing up the value of something. And on each and every occasion, we need to stop and ask ourselves, what are we doing at this point in time? Which one am I engaging in? And if we did a pie chart, we would find that most of our time is spent on haracha rather than hakara. Okay, so this is Revolba's point, and we now carry on reading the middle of this paragraph, the large paragraph on the first page of the new handout, Perik Shlishi, in which Revolba has just finished us giving examples of how, as we wander through life, we are constantly engaged in evaluation. And he says, "V'ad kedei kach hi mufgas mikon hamidozeh." So far are we removed from this measuring yardstick of, sorry, I missed out a line, I should have said. He gave us these examples. When I go shopping, I've just evaluated whether I like what I've bought, whether I think it's suitable, and whether it's good value for money. And then he carries on there on that line. Evaluation isn't measured with the yardstick, with the measuring stick of true and false. This line is absolutely essential. It's there in the middle of this paragraph, and this is the key line around which everything else revolves. Hakara, recognition, is built around true or false. Either this is a tree or it's a car.
either Einstein's theory is true or it's not true. But at the very abstract or very physical, it's either true or not true. MS v'sheka. However, when it comes to evaluation, language of true and false is the wrong language. I can ask maybe in an absolute sense, is it true that this makes me look better or worse? But I can't ask in an absolute sense, is it true that this is valuable or not valuable? You can ask how much is it worth in the market? Is it worth £100 or £1,000? That's a fact. But what does it mean to me? How much do I value it? It's a valuation. It's not used, it's not measured by the language of true and false. And therefore carries on Revolba. It's so removed from the yardstick of true and false that he now quotes the Gemara in Kesuvos, Mishelokach mekach ra min hashuk, yiganenu be'enov, yeshachenu be'enov. Someone who buys something bad in the market, should one demote it, denigrate it in the eyes, or praise it in the eyes? Means to say, as he carries on, a person values that which is personally valuable to them. This is purely subjective. This is the subjective element of the seichel. Hakara, he already told us, was the objective element. There's a pasha in B'chukosai which deals with someone who donates to Hektish, a donation, and instead of saying I'm going to give £500 to the Beis HaMikdash, they say I'm going to give a value to the Beis HaMikdash, and the language the pasuk uses isn't the value, but it always says the value to you. And the Maral in his Sefer Goaria explains, Kol haracha l'yedei harachat b'nei adam. All evaluation is through human evaluation. Sometimes you evaluate something as this, and it isn't the same if someone else who values it. But therefore the pasuk keeps on saying your evaluation, how you evaluate something. If you say I'm going to give a donation to the Beis HaMikdash of a value of something, it's a subjective thing. It's what it means to me. Even though no one else would evaluate it like this. In Lashon HaKodesh, whenever the pasuk wants to talk about valuation, it's always subjective. What is it valued to you? In the language of the Torah, the Maral points out, there isn't really a way to say the value of something, the absolute value of something. There isn't an absolute value. It's value to you. The word is constructed that always has the you in it. The value to you. And we see this just, Revolba later is going to give the example of a valuable stamp that's a stamp collector collect, which is a small piece of paper. In an absolute sense, does it have a value? Well, it's just a piece of paper, it's useless. But this is missing the point. One can't talk about in an absolute sense what its value is. What justifies the absolute value, which is saying this is nonsense, this has no absolute value, and I've just ascribed it an absolute value? Because to me, to the collector, this has a value because it gives a certain satisfaction, a certain experience to me. So two parts of the seichel: the objective seichel, which uses hakara, recognition, lives in the world of emes v'sheka, that's the yardstick, and the world of hakara, of haracha, of evaluation, in which true and false is the incorrect yardstick. It's by definition subjective. It's by definition ishit, personal. It's by definition erikacha, as Maral points out in the language of the Torah, when recognition. So I'll stop there unless there are any questions, and please God, we will resume next week. Okay, thank you very much, and I wish you all a good night. Thank you.